Chapter 36. Upper floors. On the fourth floor, it was brighter and more spacious from the get-go. There were no corridors anymore. Instead, there were 4 balconies to the outside. After stepping onto one of them, he was awestruck. He stood on a large, open platform that was built into the tower's side, hundreds of meters in the air, protected by a semi-transparent barrier that hummed faintly with power. The view was breathtaking. The forest stretched out in all directions, a sea of green under a sky of pale blue. But the beauty was slightly marred by the sight of the auxiliary towers that stood around the main tower, their tops bristling with what looked like large drone emplacements. They were a silent reminder of the power at his command. Looking down, the ground seemed so far away, the trees like tiny bushes. A sense of vertigo washed over him, a dizzying sensation that made him step back from the edge. Back inside, he noticed the open ceiling. A flat glass dome was covering a good portion of it. No wonder this floor was so bright. Cyranox thought as he walked over to one of the doors that were set into the outer wall. After opening it, he blinked. Before him was something he could only describe as a royal suite. It was at least twice the size of the ones on the 3rd floor. The entrance hall alone was bigger than the entire 2nd floor apartment. Same for the living room. It was huge, with a large, comfortable-looking sofa and armchairs arranged around a low, polished stone table. A large, empty hearth took up one wall, and a huge window overlooked the forest. The bedroom was equally impressive, with a massive 4-poster bed that looked like it could sleep 6 people with ease. While the bathroom was a marvel of luxury, with a large, sunken bathtub and a separate shower stall big enough for a party. He walked over to the large window in the living room and looked out again. This view was even better from up here. The forest looked like a green carpet, the sky a vast, endless expanse. He could see for kilometers, the world laid out before him like a map. This is for the guild master only. A grin spread over his face while he had this thought. After leaving the suite, he checked the other doors. Fair enough, all were the same size, same interior, same everything. He looked around, counting priors on each quarter, 12 of these suites in total. Cyranox shook his head and let himself fall onto a comfortable couch that stood in the center hall. After a few seconds, while he was looking at the glass dome, he realized that there was seating in the open space of the center hall. Giving the chamber another look over, he saw beautiful pillars arching upwards with seating beneath them, decorative elements, and at its heart the stone, elevated on a small raised platform. Slowly, he peeled himself off the comfortable seating and went back to the center stone. The menu opened once again after he touched it, and he selected roof. Soon after, he found himself not under open sky as he had previously thought, but inside a smaller room, which was still at least tens of meters across. Like the 4th floor, 4 ways led onto balconies. He went outside and stood on top of the tower, even higher than before. This platform went around the entire circumference of the tower. It was also protected by the same semi-transparent barrier as the floor below. The 4 auxiliary towers were only small specks from this height. At the edge, the sheer drop was dizzying. Back inside, there were only 4 doors. Behind the first, he found a bathroom that was bigger than most rooms on the 2nd floor, with a massive sunken bath. There were small, separate rooms with a shower, toilet, and even a sauna. Cyranox shook his head, dumbfounded, before opening the next one. It was a bedroom that had a bed the size of a small room. After walking inside, he looked around. The room was not just a bed, it had a small living area with a sofa and a table, and a massive window that looked out over the forest. The 3rd door led into an empty round room with a hexagonal depression in the floor 2 steps below. Empty. Why would there be an empty room up here? The thought came to him as he walked inside, intending to look around for another door. As he stepped down into the depression, its edges glowed in a faint violet, and in its center was a lit hexagon, not bigger than a dinner plate. Curious, he walked over and saw a small glowing tower symbol in its center. As he focused on the hexagon, it floated up to his hips. Surrounding it was 6 other hexagons that were gray and had no markings in their centers. Is this a map? Cyranox asked out loud. There was no answer to his question, just the floating hexagons in the center. He tried to touch them, but as he brushed over them, they moved. It's like a touchscreen. The thought was more question than statement. Deciding that this could wait, he walked out of the room. With his foot out of the depression, the glow vanished. The last door revealed something akin to a meeting room, with a large, round table made of polished dark stone, surrounded by 13 high-backed chairs. Each wall were lined with shelves, but they were empty, waiting to be filled. Looking up, he saw a ceiling that was a dome of dark, almost black glass, shimmering like a starry night sky that seemed to shift and twinkle with a slow, mesmerizing rhythm. He looked around the room. It was a place of power and authority. A place where decisions would be made that could shape the fate of the world. He walked over to the large window. The forest was a sea of green under the pale blue sky. Slowly the sun was setting, casting long shadows across the land. For a long moment he stood there, just looking at the world outside. This was worth it, he thought, the weight of his choices settling on him. The genocide, the slaughter, the fear he had instilled in others. It was all for this tower, for this power, for this chance to not just survive, but to thrive. He leaned back, a sense of satisfaction spreading through him. Chapter 37, Administration. Back at the center stone, he opened the menu. With a thought, he selected Summon Drones. Within a second, the window changed to a different list with 3 options. Yield notification. River Strike Drone, 350 tip. Holy shit, that's pricey. With a thought, he opened his status. Status! Name, Cyranox. Class, Dronemancer. Level, 15. HP, 290/290. TP, 392/392/8/min. X, 50/96/8/20. Strength, 22 plus 23 plus 35% 58. Dexterity, 20 plus 23 plus 35% 55. Constitution, 22 plus 23 plus 35% 58. Intelligence, 37 plus 23 plus 35% 78. Agility, 21 plus 23 plus 35% 57. Willpower, 38 plus 23 plus 35% 80. Yeah, well, it will set me back by quite a lot. Fuck it. Without thinking about it for too long, he summoned the Reaver Strike Drone. TP, 42/392/8/min. With a sigh, he watched his TP drop. The Reaver Strike Drone materialized in the center of the room, its matte black chassis reflecting the faint blue light of the center stone. It was larger than he expected, its aggressive design giving it a menacing appearance. The 2 forward-facing barrels glowed with a faint red light, and a single, blood-red optical lens fixed on him. It's basically a basic assault drone, but this one is bigger than mine, he thought as he walked around it, examining its design. He then walked back to the center stone and selected Guild Administration. A new window opened with a list of options. Yield notification. Member management. Territory management. Resource management. System options. They were what he had expected, the typical run-of-the-mill options for any guild leader. With this, he could accept or kick people or promote and demote them if he chose to. An interesting aspect was territory management, but it was all grayed out for now, and he could only read the subcategories. Well, those are not useful for now. Then there was resource management. The only option there was Guild Vault, but that one was also grayed out. And for it, a reason was given. The guild was still too low level. The most interesting part, though, was under system options. One specific point to be exact. Guild base layout. When he selected it, he saw the entire Black Tower as a kind of miniature hologram. Cyranox could change the individual rooms or even entire floor layouts. He could design the entire tower according to his own ideas. But for the time being, he decided against it. What was important now was to rise higher, become stronger, and gain more members for the guild itself. Furthermore, I have to level them up, or at least support them. I may be strong, but even I can't be in 2 places at once. With this thought, he closed the menu and walked onto the balcony, summoned 1 travel drone, and flew off. On his way down, he saw the strike drone perched on top of one of the auxiliary towers. System notification. 1/4 active drones. 7 TP. Plus 3 TP/min. Sure, you lazy fuck. Take a break. You have to be exhausted from all the hard work you did so far. While Cyranox had that thought, the travel drone sped up in the direction of the next dungeon that his recon drones had discovered a while back. It did not take him long to reach it. The web tunnels were just 5 kilometers northwest of the camp, while the burrowing depths were 28 kilometers to the east. The third one his drones had found was to the south, at a distance of about 32 kilometers. Since he had only traveled about 5 kilometers southwest toward the node, he was not very close to this one. 30 minutes later, he reached a smaller mountainside. His travel drone dissolved beneath him, and he landed with a soft thud on a weathered rock ledge no more than 20 meters above the ground below. The clay face was a jagged tapestry of grey stone and clinging moss, and a faint, cool breeze carried the scent of damp earth up from the canopy below. Just ahead, nestled within a shallow, cave-like outcropping, was the portal. A shimmering blue, slightly violet curtain of swirling energy that cast an ethereal glow on the surrounding rock. Cyranox stepped closer, extending a single finger toward the undulating surface. A system window flickered into existence. Dungeon. Name: Howling Caverns. Level: 15. Status: active. 15. He murmured, a slight frown creasing his brow, not without full reserves. He dismissed the window and leaned back against the cool stone of the cliff face, pulling a crushed foil packet from his pack. He ate the stale pastry without enthusiasm, its artificial sweetness a poor substitute for the rich, coppery tang of blood he still craved. His gaze swept the landscape, taking in the endless sea of green below and the distant, unfamiliar shapes of mountains on the horizon. He let the silence settle, the quiet hum of the world around him a stark contrast to the constant violence of the past few days. For 30 minutes, he simply existed, letting his teepee regenerate while enjoying the peaceful moment, one that would end the moment he stepped through the portal. Chapter 38. Howling Caverns. Cyronox inhaled deeply before he tilted his head back and exhaled through his mouth, looking up into the darkening sky. It will be night when I get out of there. All right, level 15 dungeon. We're gonna do this slow and steady. With that, he stepped through the portal and entered the Howling Caverns. Immediately, he found himself inside a dark, musky tunnel. The air was slightly damp and a cold breeze brushed past him, carrying the faintest scent of blood. One defensive drone materialized right next to him, its shield flickering up in front of him, covering nearly the entire tunnel's width. Since there was no immediate danger, he lowered his rifle while summoning the remaining drones. 2 assault drones and 1 offensive drone crowded the tunnel ahead of him. System notification. 4/4 active drones. 29 TP. 10 TP/min. Slowly, he moved forward through the damp, oppressive darkness, his boots making soft squelching sounds on the uneven floor. His drones maintained a tight formation around him, their mechanical bodies reflecting the faint bioluminescent fondy except for 1 assault drone that scouted ahead, its single violet lens cutting through the gloom. After 5 minutes of methodically advancing through the winding tunnels, the distinctive hum of his barrier drone activating suddenly filled the space behind him. From a side tunnel shrouded in deeper shadows, 2 massive dire wolves erupted simultaneously, their powerful forms launching toward his defensive drone with lethal intent. The first one managed to slip through momentarily, but the second was blocked by the barrier that flashed with hexagonal energy upon impact. Cyronox pivoted completely around, his training taking over as he raised his rifle and fired off 1 precise shot. The violet beam covered a short distance in a fraction of a second, striking the first wolf squarely in its shoulder. The wolf recoiled, with a pained yell, seared flesh filled the air. Just as Cyronox was about to shoot again, a torrent of additional beams streaked from behind him. Crimson and violet lights flashed erratically in the dark tunnel, illuminating snarling maws and glowing red eyes as more wolves emerged from the shadows. An ambush? With his defensive drone now disabled and lying on the ground, there was no real shield cover for him. He kept shooting methodically, the acrid scent of burned fur and metallic blood quickly overwhelming the damp cavern air. Suddenly, without warning, a mental connection to 1 of his assault drones severed. Without a heartbeat's hesitation, he immediately summoned a new one, its materialization consuming precious tech points. A slightly taller and thicker wolf, the Alpha, ran directly at him and launched itself through the air. He reacted instinctively, using the butt of his rifle as a bludgeon and slamming it into the wolf's side midair with all his enhanced strength. Afterwards, he shot it twice in quick succession, aiming for the head. The wolf staggered momentarily, but did not seem to care one bit that it had just been shot twice, its eyes burning with unnatural malevolence. It shook off the impacts with terrifying resilience and let out a howl that resonated with primal power, the sound echoing and magnifying through the narrow tunnels until it seemed to come from all directions at once. The howl was deafeningly loud, vibrating through Cyronox's bones and threatening to split his skull. He had to close his eyes briefly as dizziness washed over him, and he staggered back against the cavern wall. As he opened his eyes again, after what was just a second at most, he was already being tackled to the ground by a third wolf that had used the disorientation to its advantage. Frantically, he shifted his rifle between himself and the massive wolf, the metal groaning under pressure as he barely managed to prevent its jaws from closing around his head. Violet light filled his entire field of vision as a particularly thick beam shot from further down the tunnel, his remaining offensive drone acting autonomously, tearing through the entire length of the wolf on top of him. The heavy wolf collapsed onto him, its hot blood soaking through his clothes as the echoes of battle slowly died down. What the fuck was that? As he struggled to push the dead weight off him, he looked down at the massive wolf that had almost bitten his head off, noticing for the first time its unusual size and the faint glimmer in its eyes. A system window opened next to its still form, displaying information that made his blood run cold. System notification. Name: Dire Wolf. Type: Mammalian Predator. Variant. Greater. Level 15. A fucking greater right from the start. This dungeon doesn't pull any punches. A bit further to the side, another wolf lay dead. He looked at both of them. The size difference was apparent. Another window opened slightly above it. System notification. Name: Dire Wolf. Type: Mammalian Predator. Variant: Lesser. Level: 12. He checked the state of his drones, their glowing lenses flickering in the darkness like dying stars. While he had lost 4 of them in this brutal battle, the remaining ones did not look anywhere near fit. It was still operational, but one had a deep gash in its front that cracked its lens, spiderwebbing across the optical sensor. Another assault drone listed slightly to one side, its stabilizers clearly damaged. He resummoned that one, just to be sure it would not become an issue later. The scent of blood filled the air around him, thick and coppery, his mouth watering at the smell. Suppressing the primal desire to tear into them, he walked further down the tunnel, keeping a close eye out for any side passages, his rifle sweeping left to right. Inside the tunnel, he encountered 3 more of them, their eyes glowing like embers in the gloom. Still somewhat paranoid from before, he scanned every wall for possible ambushes and found none. The rock face is solid and unyielding. With an order to his defensive drone to keep its barrier as close behind him as possible, he opened fire shortly after the wolves noticed him themselves, their growls turning to snarls. This fight was not like the one before. The wolves fell shortly after without much of a struggle compared to the earlier encounter, their bodies crumpling to the stone floor with a final, wet thud. Cyranox was about 20 minutes in when he saw that the tunnel was opening up, the darkness ahead giving way to a faint, diffused light. After making sure he was in a relatively safe spot, a small alcove that offered some cover, he dismissed his drones and let his TP recover, the silence of the chamber broken only by his own breathing. The entire time, he stood with his back against the cold, damp wall, his rifle drawn and ready to unload if necessary, his senses on high alert. It took a few minutes to regain his lost TP, the slow crawl of the number rising in his vision a test of patience. After it was full once more, he resummoned his drones, their familiar forms materializing with a soft hum, and entered the chamber, the vast space opening up before him like the maw of some great beast. Chapter 39. Primal Instinct. Cyranox slowly made his way into the open space in front of him, his boots making soft sounds against the stone floor. A large, multi-layered chamber stretched out before him, its scale imposing in the dim light filtering from above. He could make out 4 different plateaus of varying heights along the outer wall, each serving as potential vantage points or ambush locations, as well as several tunnel entrances spread across the chamber like gaping mouths. The ground was a lighter color than the stone walls, a sickly grey-white that crunched underfoot. Bones cracked underneath his boots as he stepped fully into the chamber, the sound unnaturally loud in the vast space. The ground was littered with bones of all sizes and conditions, from tiny rodent skulls to massive femurs that might have belonged to something much larger than a wolf. His drones flew in beforehand, the assault drones drifting off to each side like silent sentinels, while the offensive drone floated above the entrance of the chamber, close to its ceiling, its violet lens scanning the area. The moment they'd entered the space, there was a deafening howl, followed by another and another from somewhere deeper within, the sound echoing off the cavern walls and creating a disorienting chorus of predatory calls. Without any time to waste, he brandished his rifle and shot one of the lesser wolves that had emerged from a nearby tunnel entrance. The beam ripped into its flesh, burning a smoking hole through its side, but it was still running at him, its eyes burning with furious determination. Within seconds, the cave filled with streaks of light in 2 colors as his drones opened fire. What had been less than a dozen wolves at first quickly escalated into multiple dozens as they flooded in from various side tunnels, their sheer numbers overwhelming the chamber. The air grew thick with the smell of ozone and burnt fur. Cyranox fired his rifle at the smaller ones first, picking them off with methodical precision, while his offensive drone's violet beam tore into the clearly noticeable greater ones, their larger forms making them easy targets. His 2 assault drones quickly found themselves outmatched and were ripped apart, their metallic shells giving way with sickening crunches under the wolf's powerful jaws. Without slowing his rate of fire, he summoned new drones, their materialization consuming precious TP but necessary for survival. Meanwhile, the previously safe offensive drone was ripped out of the sky by a wolf that executed a wall jump, using the cavern wall as a springboard to reach the high-floating machine. The drone's lens shattered as it was dragged down with it. Even his defensive drone was pushed back in no time at all, its barrier flickering under the coordinated assault of multiple greater wolves. After less than a minute inside this chamber, he had already lost multiple drones, the cost of this encounter rising rapidly with each passing second. He jumped to the side as one of the lesser dire wolves leapt at him, slipping past his shield. Landing on the ground, he took an overcharged shot that blasted its head clean off, bone and brain matter splattering against the cavern wall. What he was fighting on the ground, his defensive drone was destroyed, but quickly replaced, its barrier flaring to life just in time to block a lunging wolf. It was pure coincidence that he noticed his offensive drone was no longer shooting. It was lying on the ground, pushed into a corner and held down by 2 wolves. Clever little shits, not finishing off my drones. He thought, a flicker of grudging respect cutting through the adrenaline. His attention was split across multiple fronts at once. He constantly had to evade incoming wolves while aiming, while also keeping an eye on his drones and their mental links, resummoning those that were already out of the fight but not yet destroyed. This went on for minutes. It was pure chaos. 2 of the greater wolves teamed up and went after him. After howling and staggering him for a moment, they charged. He managed to shoot one of them down with the help of 2 overcharged beams, one from him and one from his drone. But the second was already too close for comfort, and he jumped aside. It leapt him and pushed off his body with its hind legs, catapulting him straight into the nearest horde of wolves. One fell to his rifle, another to a crimson beam. There were too many. To protect his throat, he shoved his arm between a wolf's jaws as they closed around it. Searing pain shot through him as it tugged and shook its head, teeth grinding against bone. Cyranox drew the dagger from his belt and plunged it into the side of the wolf's head, feeling the blade scrape against skull. He slowly got up after kicking the corpse off him, but he did not make it far before being tackled by a greater dire wolf. As it snapped at him, he tried to hold it back. Pushing his hands against its massive form, his right hand sank into warm, sticky fur just beneath a wound, one that had penetrated hide and flesh, but not deeply enough. Desperately, he drove his hand forward with full force into the greater dire wolf's chest. Hot blood ran down his arm as his fingers closed around its beating heart. In one motion, he kicked the wolf off him while ripping its heart straight out of its chest. With the still beating heart in his hand, he brought it to his mouth and squeezed it like a juice box, drinking the hot blood. With each drop, he felt different. System notification. Plus 30 TP. Knocking an incoming wolf aside with his elbow, he immediately fired an overcharged beam into its chest. Without thinking, he ripped its heart out and drank its blood. System notification. Plus 18 TP. His vision turned red, and he could hear the heartbeat of every individual wolf. He wanted more, needed more. With a wicked smile, he grabbed the next wolf mid-leap, bit directly into its neck, and tore out a chunk of flesh. System notification. Plus 18 TP. Cyranox entered frenzy. Everything after that became a blur. The drones never stopped firing except when they were pinned or destroyed, in which case he summoned them anew. Instead of dodging and retreating, he welcomed every wolf that came at him. Either they fell to his Magitech rifle or his dagger, and those were the lucky ones. Eventually, the sounds of fighting ceased. His head cleared, and the sight before him was brutal. It reminded him of the fawns from his first few days. Blood and bodies sprawled everywhere. Some were ripped apart, others missing chunks of flesh. He looked down at himself and found he looked much the same. One of his arms was missing a large chunk of flesh down to the bone. That doesn't look good at all. As the adrenaline faded, pain crashed into him. His leg was definitely broken, along with several deep tears. He coughed as he summoned 2 healing drones, his vision blurring and shifting. System notification. 2/4 active drones. 12 TP. Plus 2 TP/min. Then everything went dark. Chapter 40. Oh, what? Slowly, sound returned. First a faint humming, then the even fainter whistle of cold wind that seeped through cracks in the stone walls. His eyes opened, his vision swimming before gradually focusing on the dim cavern ceiling above. After a few blinks, he saw 2 healing drones hovering above him, their soft blue light casting gentle shadows on the carnage surrounding him. He could feel every bone beneath him. Luckily, none of them were his own. Looking around as he got up, he saw that the 2 healing drones were the only active ones, their mechanical bodies the sole source of light in the blood-soaked chamber. With a wave of his hand, he dismissed them. They vanished in a cloud of blue sparks, leaving him in near darkness. That was officially worse than the broodmother, he murmured while getting off the ground, his voice hoarse and strained. Cyranox examined his body, running his hands over limbs that had been mangled moments before. Everything had healed. Even his arm, which had previously consisted almost entirely of bone, was completely restored, without scars or signs of injury. The only evidence of his near-fatal wounds was the dried blood caking his clothes and skin. Magic healing sure is great. Afterward, he checked his gear. His dagger was gone, and so was his rifle. The rifle was easy to spot, lying half buried under a pile of wolf carcasses, but the knife took a bit longer to locate. It was buried deep inside the skull of a wolf, its hilt barely visible beneath bone fragments and congealed blood. With everything back in place, he walked over to one of the ledges and pulled himself up, his muscles protesting despite the magical healing. Once he reached the highest one, he saw half a dozen openings that led deeper inside, the dark mouths promising further danger. He took a deep breath, the acrid smell of death filling his lungs, and summoned 4 recon drones. System notification. 4/4 active drones. 20 TP. Plus 0 TP/min. He watched them fly off into the tunnels ahead, their forms flickering as they entered stealth. With some time on his hands, he took out a bottle of sweet tea and took a big swig while checking his status. Status! Name: Cyranox. Class: Dromancer. Level: 15. HP: 290/290. TP: 342/392/min. X: 50/96/8/20. I'm almost full on TP. That means I was out for at least 2 to 3 hours. Cyranox stood at the edge of the highest plateau, keeping an eye on each entrance, his rifle ready for anything that might come through. But nothing happened as expected. After all, he had been lying on the ground for hours and was still alive. Not long after, he received a mental ping from one of his drones that had found the correct tunnel. He made his way down to the 3rd highest level and took the left tunnel entrance, summoning 2 assault drones, 1 offensive drone, and 1 defensive drone as he moved. System notification. 4/4 active drones. 29 TP. 10 TP/min. He constantly checked corners, walls, and outcroppings as he advanced. This shit will give me PTSD. He uttered his rifle swap from left to right. After a fair amount of walking, he reached a point where the tunnel opened up. However, he decided to turn back and rest briefly a little further down the tunnel. He wasn't tired, but his TP pool wasn't full and who knew what might be waiting ahead. He began to eat while waiting for his TP to replenish. The constant breeze of cold air was worse down here. Almost half an hour later, he prepared himself. Leaving his bag behind, he summoned his drones once more. As he stepped into the cavern, he saw a high-ceilinged chamber. It was nothing he hadn't seen before. The smell was rancid. But worse was the cold wind that howled past him as he entered. It was nearly freezing. This chamber was similar to the previous one, except it had only 1 additional level, high above where he couldn't clearly see. All drones moved inside and took their positions. Without announcing himself, he fired a salvo of overcharged shots into the chamber. 3 of the dozen direwolves fell instantly before the battle even began. He didn't hold back. Every shot was overcharged, draining his TP with each blast. After spending 60 TP on overcharged shots in the last minute alone, only 1 enemy remained, and it was clearly a greater direwolf. That was until it stood up. System notification. Name: Alpha Direwolf. Type: Mammalian Predator. Variant: Greater. Level: 17. It was a massive specimen, standing taller than the greater direwolf by no small margin. On its front shoulder was a deep, thick groove carved into its body, a permanent scar. There was no way he could hold both of them back at once. The Alpha let out a howl even more deafening than that of the greater dire wolves. With concentrated focus fire, he killed the greater dire wolf before they reached his barrier. The Alpha, however, charged straight into the barrier. After just a few swipes, it shattered. That brief moment was enough. He charged both his Magi-type rifle and the offensive drone's weapon, releasing a simultaneous shot that tore deep into the Alpha's already scarred shoulder. It staggered. There wasn't much it could do after that. By the time it recovered, the barrier was already back up. Both assault drones continuously fired their crimson beams into it. In the end, the Alpha fell under the relentless onslaught. Cyranox shook his head as he dismissed his drones and walked back toward his backpack. He was strong, but alone. Not much of a threat. What a shame. The Node Guardian was stronger than he was. A cold wind drifted through the tunnels as he bent down to pick up his backpack. A thought struck him. Where was the system notification? A deep, vibrating howl echoed through the tunnel. Carried by the chilling wind, the chamber entrance froze over as shards of ice and snow blasted down the tunnel. Slowly, he turned around, the strap of his backpack still in his hand. The chamber he had just left was now a frozen landscape. Everything was covered in ice and frost. At the center of it all stood a wolf even more massive than the Alpha. Its fur was pure white silver with a faint blue sheen, its mane resembling flowing ice. System notification. Name: Elemental Dire Wolf. Type: Mammalian Predator. Variant: Greater. Level: 19. That's what you get for shit-talking.